Well, hello, and yes, we're live on the Journey podcast live, and it's all very exciting. Not been live for a little while, been busy with all sorts of other things, but we're live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. And I'm Phil Croshaw, and this lady here that you see is Wendy Bowers, and we're going to talk to you today about the stuff that chicks have to deal with. So, a very warm welcome and a very good morning to all our people all over the world, millions of them, Wendy. And then we woke up. I'm Phil Croshaw. I'm from Geeky Group, and this is my good friend and associate and colleague, Wendy Bowers. So I said at the start that we're going to be talking today about the stuff that chicks have to deal with. That was a joke, okay? I don't refer to women as chicks normally, because I know I don't want to trigger people. I don't want trolling. It was a joke. And Wendy knows I was joking because she knows me and my sense of humor, northern sense of humor. So actually, it's about women and the stuff that seriously it's about women and some of the challenges and experiences that women go through. And I do see Wendy, and I've not said this to her before, but I do see Wendy as a real, somebody I would always say, if somebody asks me who represents women and carries the flagstaff for women and their challenges, I would honestly say Wendy would come the top of my list in my mind. She does a great job of it. So without further ado, I'm going to get Wendy to introduce herself because she'll do a lot better than me. So Wendy, very warm welcome to the Journey Podcast Live. Tell us who you are and what you're about.
Oh, good morning, Phil. Yeah, it's really nice to be chatting to you again. I'm Wendy Bowers, and I am a Lancashire lass, and I've lived in Lancashire all my life, usually within sight of Pendle Hill. And I have travelled and worked abroad, and I've worked all over the UK as well. So what do? I started off building a manufacturing business with my first husband. We did that straight from college. Everybody said you couldn't do that. The parents were completely disappointed because they wanted me to go off to university. But we set up a business eventually making really beautiful bespoke furniture, and that business is still a very successful business in Lancashire. And of course, really young age, employing people, had about 30 staff by the time we were in our mid-20s. So it was a very fast learning curve. We grew up very, very fast. And life goes on, all sorts of things happen, and I ended up building up my own business using the skills I'd learned in the family business, where I was predominantly the finance director. So I ended up as a woman in a bit of a man's world, really. Started my own business 23 years ago. Have always had a real interest in equality. Very quickly noticed I was a woman in the minority when I was turning up at financial events and things. And over the past 23 years have really, both outside of work and inside work, done anything I could to fly the flag for women, to help level the playing field for women. And I'm sure we'll get into this later, but I've done that at some, very senior levels. And I'm still doing it now. So, with having raised 4 kids and been through divorce and mums with dementia and all the kind of things that happen through life, I just see myself as somebody that's just another woman out there, somehow holding it all together.
Wonderful. That's a fantastic introduction. And as you know, this is an area that often does intrigue me. It does intrigue me and makes me quite curious. And I think part of that is, as I've said to you before, that as a man, I only can see things through the lenses of a man. you know, and people have said to me before, and who've experienced racial racism and stuff like that, that Phil, you can't understand what it's like for me to be me because you're not my color. And it's a similar kind of thing. When you look back to the days like you talked about there in the early days in your 20s, how difficult was it to be a woman? I'm thinking, because this is way before Me Too. This is way before what was acceptable and not acceptable now. How difficult was it?
Well, do you know, Phil, I think I was always a bit of a radical, really. So I was at college in kind of the mid-70s. I know you can't believe I'm that old, but I am. And I remember at college kind of rounding girls up and taking them off to the family planning clinic, which was like, you know, pretty far out for those days, because, you know, we'd only just got that people aged 16 plus could go and visit a family planning clinic without their parents knowing about it. And I was always, I think, you know, a sharer of information and a connector. And my parents were really, really strict. You know, I was brought up in a fairly well-off family, but my mum had bipolar, so it was difficult at home. You never knew what you were going to get. My dad was extremely strict, and the whole ethos was work, 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 and only when all your work's been done can you ever relax. And basically, you know, the mantra of if you work hard, you can achieve anything. Which really has been detrimental at some stages of my life. But back then, when I was 16, 17, and I decided not to go off to university because I'd met my first husband, we met very young at like 16, 17, and we'd already started building a business. And we used to go off to agricultural shows and sell all sorts of things that he made out of wood. And I went and got myself a career in insurance and was the major breadwinner for the first 4 or 5 years of our marriage. Now, at that time in the 70s, there was an awful lot of belief that we would, as women, gain equality in the next 10 or 20 years maximum. We'd made fantastic progress in the 60s. You know, still women were only going into quite a narrow range of careers as I left college, you know, banking, nursing, teaching, administrative roles. But more and more women were going off to university and started to go into law and things like that. So we were really, really hopeful that, you know, it wouldn't be many years before, if we wanted, and that's crucial, if we wanted to achieve those high-flying roles and build businesses and do all sorts of things that it appeared, you know, that men just got to naturally do, then it was just going to happen. So in some ways, in many ways, it's disappointing now that, you know, I'm almost 50 years into my working life, and we're still having many of the same conversations. Don't get me wrong, things are so different, but we've still got a long way to go. So back then I went into a family business. Now bear in mind, because it was a family business, it was a bit of a kind of closed environment for me. I was the best at figures. I was very good commercially. I was very good creatively. So I ended up sort of doing the finance and the marketing, and you know, we built this business, but I didn't really mix much with any other businesses. We weren't big ones for networking or anything like that. We grew our business because our work was amazing. The stuff that we designed and made was amazing, and so the business really grew.
So the word of mouth basically kicked in, did it?
Word of mouth. We used to do the old Yellow Pages and get ourselves in Lancashire Life, you know, but it was really all reputation. And it was only when I came out of the family business after divorce and I decided to set my own business up, and I did what many women do. What is it that I understand and have experience in? Well, it's finance, and our own business had been through many ups and downs, and we'd nearly gone bust once, but we never did. I've got that incredible experience. I can go out and help small businesses to understand how important finance is. and really understanding and keeping on top of it and understanding your monthly management figures and accessing finance and stuff. So that's what I did. I went out to do that. And as I said previously, I would go to events to find out about the new Rosebud funding or whatever it was that was coming, and Michelin grants and things that were back there. And there'd be me and maybe one other woman in a room of 100 men. So it was then that I thought, hang on a minute, what's going on here? Because I was one of 4 directors in our family business, and there was never any question that there were 2 women, 2 men in our family business. So that's when it hit me, and that was kind of the mid to late 90s, and I started to go to networking events, and there weren't many women there. And in 1999 I set up the very first women's networking group in East Lancashire, and it very quickly grew. Within 6 months we had nearly 200 members, and it became too much for me to deal with on my own. And we allowed Burnley Enterprise Trust to help us with it, but they kind of took over, really. So anyway, I went off then, and I was always really confident, and I think this had been a product of my upbringing. I always had to be ready. So you would walk home from school and you would be, feeling a bit anxious. Now, what kind of mood's my mum going to be in? Is there going to be a present on my bed, or am I going to get a slap round my head? Did I forget to do something? It gets you, you could either think, poor me, and you could, or you could think, well, I need to be ready for this. And that does breed a real resilience within you. I was confident because I'd been made to do, when I was little, elocution and drama, and as I grew I fell in love with it massively. But when you've stood in front of examiners at the age of 4 in a big school hall with your knees knocking, and you've done it so many times through the years, then that sort of gets you to a position where you can walk through a door and talk to anybody. So this was very useful as I was building networks and connections. And I was asked fairly on in my own business journey, and I took staff on quite soon, and very soon had a team of about 5, all ladies, doing bookkeeping and accounts and things. And I was asked by community business partners in Blackburn if I would be a mentor, and I enjoyed that. And I was very soon asked if I would be their company secretary on their board. And it was when Amanda Meacham took over as chief exec, and there was just the 2 of us females on the board, and the rest of the board was male. And as I joined other boards, that was very much the story. It really was that there would be, and I'm not saying a token woman, because I never felt that I'd been invited just because I was a woman. I always really did feel, or very quickly understand, that I was as good as anybody around that table, and I was there because of my experience and my ability to communicate, which I think is massive.
Yeah, do you know what? I'm just thinking now, because you said things have changed a fair bit, which I think they have, generally speaking, as a male observer. But I know you've done some research recently, which I found really fascinating. Some formal research rather than just an opinion, which in this day and age is quite quirky, really, isn't it? But some formal research all about women, particularly in Lancashire. I know, and you can tell us about it now, but I think it's probably replicated all over the place, what you found out. So talk me through that research and how it came about and what you identified.
Well, how this came about is that between the years of 2013 and 2017, I was on the British Chambers of Commerce National Board, and I asked, when I was in that role, could I be their representative for women's enterprise, because they didn't have any kind of particular women focus area. And whilst I was doing that, I did a lot of research in conjunction with chambers all across the UK about why there weren't more female directors in SMEs. Now, bear in mind, this was 2015, and we were at 20% of directors in SMEs in the UK were female. 7 years on, we're still at 20% of directors in the UK in SMEs are female. And over those years, myself and another lady called Jane Binion, who runs a fantastic operation up in Lancaster called the Growing Club, which really does help women set up and grow businesses in that area. We'd both been, unbeknown to each other, having a go at Andrew Leeming, who heads up Boost, which is our business support program for Lancashire, our growth hub for Lancashire. And we kept saying, look, we're wasting lots of potential here. We know that as a country, if women set up businesses and grew businesses at the same rate as men, we would release 250 billion into the economy. And as long as we've only got women at 19% of businesses overall, which is what the figure is nationally and in Lancashire, and about 24% of businesses in Lancashire are the self-employed business I'm talking about now, so only the sole traders, they're female. And we've got this figure that's remained level and static since 2012, actually, that only 20% of directors in Lancashire are female. Then we're missing this huge opportunity. And we'd really like to see some kind of cohesive strategy for women that aligns itself to the county strategy. And we'd like to see, some kind of joined up business support for women, rather than, there's loads of things happening today because it's International Women's Day. And then, then there's just odd things popping up here and there. So Andrew was really on board with this and gave us a small budget from the Resilience Fund and said, can you write me a headline report? So I'd done a lot of research over the years. So the main of the report was already there for me. But Jane and I worked on it together, and we ended up with a 56-page report called Growing Women, Growing Lancashire. And in this report, we look at the national picture, we look at the Lancashire picture as well as we can, because very few things are measured at county level anymore. In fact, there is a distinct lack of measurement over the past 10 years. And I'm not going to get political, but the fact is, since 2010, we have not been focusing at all on the opportunities, and the economic benefits of helping more women and more ethnic minority and more disabled people into the business space. At the end of the report, we came up with 5 key recommendations, and I'm really pleased to say that the county has really started to move on these recommendations already. So we wanted a Women in Enterprise steering group for the county, which we've got, and we had our second steering group meeting yesterday, and that's all to help us establish a strategy to get those numbers up. We wanted to see more funded business support for women. It is true that the business support that we've got in the county that's funded is open to all, but open to all doesn't mean appropriate for all. And so what we found was that there was this big gap. So a lot of women were accessing the startup support and getting going, but then the next level of support around the business mentoring, which is really, really useful, only kicks in when you get to 10 plus staff. Now, very few women grow businesses to 10 plus staff. Only 8% of women ever get a business to $1 million turnover, and there are a myriad different reasons for that. And I'm not saying it's anything to do with the fact that women are, less capable of running businesses than men. That is not the case. So we needed to look at a business program that would address that missing gap. That's already been developed and will be launched in about 3 weeks' time. I'm very pleased to say that I'll be delivering that. It's an 18-month program, but there's only 12 places on it. And, it's a pilot. We need lots more of it. We needed a web page on Boost that women can go to, Right, where's some support for me as a woman? What's going on? And I must say, this isn't just for women in business, this is for women in leadership too. Okay, so any woman in a leadership or management, senior management role, or starting or growing a business can go to this page. They can find all sorts of links, they can read the report, they can see what programs there are available, what award ceremonies, etc., etc. And we want men to go to this page too, because we want men to be really involved with this. We want to hear stories about men who are really championing women in their organizations, and, you know, and open to the huge opportunity that's there if they can work in ways that help women carry on in the workplace and carry on, you know, building great businesses and careers. A lot of women that we interviewed, and we interviewed a lot of women and had focus groups and things like that, were saying that they don't want that if they get a mentor, and a mentor is so valuable for businesses, they wanted an industry specific mentor. It wasn't really much use having a mentor from a manufacturing company if they were building a business that was all about selling products online and exporting online and things like that. We want the whole of the business support community in Lancashire to be more aware of the different types of support women need, in addition to or differently to men. And so we want them to be reading our report, and another great report that came out a couple of years ago called the Alison Rose Review. But the main thing is collaboration. You know, we sit there in Lancashire and we've got Lancashire Business View doing this over here, and the Chambers doing that over there, and we've got the FSB doing this, and we've got the county doing that, and we've got the Boost doing that, and when we've got the Forbes doing some great stuff, and, you know, so we need to collaborate and all, you know, join together. And a lady from downtown has just joined our board, which is really great, because she's kind of one of the only women at downtown. And, you know, so it's all this kind of thing. And when we were at the steering group yesterday, we were just saying that it's going to be maybe a slow long-term job, but it's just raising this awareness all the time, that even now in 2022 there are many things that we should be doing. And as a county, we just want to lead the way. It'll be fantastic.
Do you know what though, Wendy? I can't believe that situation and what you've identified there is probably replicated all over the country. I think if somebody was listening to this in Devon and Cornwall, or in Sussex, or East Anglia, I can't imagine that there'll be a lot of similarities. You mentioned about the fact that it's not because of the capability element of women, which I totally get, and I totally understand that, and quite rightly so. Is it, gosh, I know there's a number of reasons, but is one of the reasons that despite all the changes and developments, there's still almost like a society expectation that women will take on more of the responsibilities of child care and child rearing? And then of course, as we mentioned the other day, you've now got you get to a certain age of say 40s, 50s, where your parents are getting older. Maybe one of those parents dies, left on their own, need looking after. Then they maybe have some struggles with physical or mental dementia type stuff. And it's still kind of expected in some ways that the women will pick up that responsibility. Is that the case, or is that just my perception?
No, it is one of the reasons. It is a huge reason, and it is one of the reasons. And we live in a country where our childcare is the second most expensive in the world after New Zealand, and the second most expensive by quite a long way. And you look at countries where they have modelled the cost of their childcare completely differently, and their adult care. And it's paid for through taxation. So, you know, you're looking at some of the Scandinavian countries, and you see there that there are, you know, the figures do show that women, you know, there are more women in senior roles, you know, carrying on in their careers. There are not necessarily more women starting businesses, but having the opportunity to grow bigger businesses. So there are various things. There is absolutely the care element. And I've experienced that. So I brought up 4 children while I was building my business. So when I started my business, my children were 11, 10, 7 and 4 months old. My husband worked shifts, which really did help, actually. And he was always really prepared to pull his weight. And as the children got into their teenage years, everybody had to pull their weight in our family. They say I was a strict mum, but it's produced some absolutely incredible adults, I'm telling you. So everybody pulled too. So where we find difficulties is that, because there is this societal expectation, but because also a lot of women don't want to miss out on those incredibly magical years and formative years of raising their children. Now, where we've got this huge yawning gap in the UK is that, yes, it's kind of acceptable that you'll take a year out when baby comes along. Interesting, only about 6% of men are taking that opportunity, which is now available for shared parental leave. So the majority of people that are doing that first year are women. But then if you want to stay out of the workplace till your child gets older, then it's, it sort of has a massive impact on your career, because those are the years where you could be moving from middle management to senior management, or really starting to grow your business. And then, of course, you go back into the workplace, and the cost of childcare is just crazy, as we all know. So the caring is one thing. The other thing is that there are a lot of women who have not, because of the fact that they are then coming home to look after the children straight from work, or they're reducing their hours to part-time to look after the children, because if they go to work full-time, they're not ending up with any wage because it's all going on childcare. So they're coming home, they're working less, they're coming home, they're not building the networks that men are building in their careers, and after work events and networking events that are often breakfast time or tea time. So they're not building the networks. That's another thing. The third thing is, a lot of women have a different attitude towards risk than men. I'm not saying it's in fact, it's a more careful attitude towards risk. So you find that when women do access finance around their business, then the results are usually a lot better. Less businesses go bust. They're really careful about the amount. They tend to grow slowly. And far less women's businesses go bust in the first year than men's. It's all there, it's fact. But often the people awarding the finance see this as, not a strength. They see that this person is not ambitious enough, is, not asking for enough money.
That's fascinating.
Fascinating. But also there is the stark fact that a lot of women are single parents now, and a lot of women are accessing universal credit. Now, there used to be a fantastic scheme called the New Enterprise Allowance that took you from benefits into a business. It gave you a grant, it gave you a mentor, and then it also gave you like an income for the first 6 months. The government have scrapped it. There is nothing to replace it. So there are so many women that would have loved to have started a business so that they could go out and support their family, and that has been taken away from them. So there's a lot of women who don't have access to the capital needed to start a business. And sometimes with the businesses we can start these days online, you only need £1,000 to start a business, but they just can't access it because they're living hand to mouth. So there's the access to finance is huge and is really well explored in the Alison Rose review. There's attitude towards risk, there's caring responsibilities. Another reason why women aren't seen growing fast growing businesses is that women tend to set up businesses, as I said previously, doing what they know. And women have, in general, they are encouraged throughout their education to go into, caring opportunities, and things like that. So you get a girl arriving at college with 2 GCSEs, and she's got to take a maths and English again, she will be encouraged to go into social care, childcare, or hospitality. If you get a boy arriving in exactly the same way, he will be encouraged to go into engineering, construction, or digital. Those are where you're going to make money. That's where you can grow the business. And that's where the whole strategy of the UK industrial strategy is placed. They want people going into low carbon, technology, innovation, digital. Women are going into care, hospitality, retail, professional services, which is great. And so they come out of those businesses and set those kind of businesses up. So there's all those reasons why women, even if they get to set up a business, they're tending to set up the smaller, more local businesses.
That's absolutely fascinating and so logical. Actually, when you describe that, it's just so logical. What do you think needs to happen to change things? Now, I know you're not Nostradamus, and you like me have not got any more magic pixie dust because Harry Potter's used it all up. What do you think has to change it all? Because, like you said, there's so much just changed, but then there's a lot hasn't changed. Is it government has to have significantly more female influence, or what do you think it is?
The nature of most governments that have a 4-year or a 5-year term or whatever is short termism. It's headlines, short term. What can we do to make to try and make a short term impact and get in again? And this is never going to help this situation and many situations in the UK. We need long-term thinking, and we need to think long-term about what do we do about the crippling cost of childcare. We need to think long-term about the fact that if more women were able to stay at home or spend more time at home with their children through those formative years, we would have less unemployment. We would have less people in our prisons. We had some amazing initiatives. And again, this is sounding political, but there was a lot of focus, and delivered through the regional development agencies, which all had a women's enterprise steering group, So between 2004 and 2010, there was a lot of focus from the government around equality. And you could say, well, we've got the levelling up, we've got the shared prosperity funds, and we're beginning to see, as we exit from the EU, whatever you might think about that there are new forms of funding being put in place with the right intentions. But Phil, and you and I would both like to completely blow up our education system and let teachers do what they're supposed to do. So teachers aren't supposed to teach to test. Teachers are supposed to find the individual promise in each student and bring that out and enable the student to understand themselves and their own inner strengths and their own gifts that they arrive on this world with. And until we change and stop chasing the American way of educating our children, I believe that we are just going to keep, we're going to keep having these generations of kids and teenagers that are filled with anxieties. And a lot of that is due to test. A lot of it's due to social media, but that's a whole different concept.
That's another show.
But I do, and very interestingly, we have 50% of students at GCSE that take physics are female. It drops to 10% at A level. What's happening? Why aren't the girls carrying on with the sciences? And what are the conversations that are happening in schools? Where the teachers are genuinely just too busy to give careers advice. And, so there's this whole thing about businesses doing more with local colleges and schools and things, and there are lots of initiatives around there to do that. Quite often you get businesses saying, we'd love to help. but nobody at the school or college has got time to support, to bring us in, to talk to the kids, to help. The Nelson and Colne College Group are working with my company Roll to ensure that the curriculums are modern, suitable, include, are developed with the guidance of local employers. They have a program called Transitions, which is specifically for the kids that might be struggling a bit when they arrive at college, and it's teaching them life skills, employment skills. But I'm telling you now, the lady there who has to lead and head up this program is trying to head up 5 different job roles. She is so busy that, I have to battle to try and get these employers in that want to help. So, there's
well, I know, because as you know, I've been involved on the, if you like, in the periphery of that, and I went to talk to the students and the business side of things, and it was fascinating to talk to them, actually. But it was what I found interesting, slight aside, and it was vast majority male is the first thing I would say based on what we're talking about today. There must have been about 3 girls in there of about a class of about 30.
Phil, remember you went in as the digital ambassador, didn't you?
I went in as a business person who's actually been there, got the teacher, and got a bald head on the back of it.
That's right.
That's the kind of what I went. That's what I went in on. But it was interesting, the fact that what was thought was fascinating was there was one guy in there who, just the questions he was asking and the way he was approaching it, and I thought, I said to my wife when I got back, you'll be one to watch. And you could just tell by the questions he was asking. One or two of the other questions were straight away was, what car do you drive? Do you know what I mean? Have you got a Ferrari? All that kind of stuff. At that age, that's the sort of thing they're thinking about. Yeah, I get it. Totally.
How quick can I be rich? Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say, John's just said, as you can see there, John was saying there, I totally agree. Thanks for that, John. And, as you picked up on, it's something I have an issue with. And what strikes me as ridiculous in the current age is that, why are we trying to test people on things that they can remember? I've got a device in my hand now where you ask me any question, you ask me, some nuclear physics question, and I've got the answer in probably 30 seconds at least, maybe shorter time. Yeah. So why do we need to remember that Battle of Hastings was in 1066?
We're still educating people as we did initially in the Victorian times, aren't we? It's a factory mentality.
Unbelievable.
All in there, we'll treat them all the same, we'll give them all the same tests, and there are many teachers who are doing their best within the confines of the current curriculum and testing processes. They're really doing their best to teach kids about their about how to research, etc., but also about their own inner resilience and inner strength. And the things that employers tell us day in, day out when I'm doing this kind of work is, I need my people coming into jobs, I need them to be able to communicate, I need them to be able to turn up on time, I need them to understand that they've to look smart, I need them to be able to look me in the eye when they're having a conversation, I need and a lot of these things are the things that need to be taught, and in a lot of families they would be taught, but in other families they may be not taught, so it's what we want is, we want to turn out whole people and recognize, as we said before, their own gifts. And a lot of kids will be much more interested in and better at at vocational subjects and things. And I know that there's T levels and all these things, and it is there are big changes being made, and we've got some fantastic colleges locally and universities as well. In Lancaster, we're very, very lucky. But this whole everybody needs to go to university, I just don't agree with that. Maybe that's because I never went. But,
well, neither did I. And I would argue that it's cliche as it might sound, it's never done me any harm. Something I pointed out to my mum numerous times earlier, because she said, you know, when I wouldn't go to university because I was itching to get out to the big wide world of work. And when in my corporate career, I did pretty well, and it was always like, I told you didn't need to go to uni. Ah, yes, but she wouldn't have it. But one day I gave her a pay slip and said, right, mum, that's it. That's no more conversations about it.
But when I was younger, actually, I had a real chip on my shoulder about the fact that I hadn't been to university. And when I started to build my own business, and I was going out networking and things, it was quite, if you were in professional services, you were expected to have been and got your degree and everything. And it was only when I was the finance director at Taylor's solicitors in Blackburn and Manchester for a few years. And one of the partners there said to me, "Oh, Wendy, which university did you go to?" And I said, "Oh, I've never been to university." And he said, I just always assumed you had because you're working at our level. And I don't know what it was about that comment, but it just like took away that, I was just like, well, yeah, I am working at your level, and I've proved myself over and over, kind of thing. So so there was a bit of imposter syndrome back then, and also when I've arrived on certain boards, the British Chambers of Commerce board, I was sat there with the ex-head of Asda and city bankers and people like that, and I can remember the first meeting thinking, why am I sitting here? And then very quickly, within 10 minutes of the meeting, I'm like, I know why I'm sitting here, because I represent your typical member, and I have got a vast amount of knowledge that's useful. So women do sometimes just, they feel like they have to be perfect at something before they go for it. And whereas a man will like have 50% of the skills needed or whatever, and he'll just, wing it, and, and that's very generalistic. But there is research that has borne that out, lots and lots of research. So, women, we need to be, we are sometimes our own worst enemy, but that's, there'll be men out there that are like that as well. We don't want to say that.
Yeah, sometimes you can't totally generalize. There's always exceptions to rules, but I get where you're coming from. I do get where you're coming from.
It's in the reports, in the Alison Rose report, that there is evidence to really underpin that. So
interestingly, I ran a number of online seminars and workshops and such like for the DTI in London a few months ago, and the topic that got by far the biggest response in terms of turn-ups, was oversubscribed twice, so 2 times over, was imposter syndrome. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it is, and for men as well as women,
For both.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Now I was going to go because I'm conscious of time, obviously, because I know you and me. We could be on till tomorrow morning, and but I know you've been doing some work on something called the Courage and Renewal Program. So tell me about that, and specifically when it comes to businesses, there's a lot more talk now about mental well-being and general well-being and mental health and all that, what some people might call mamby-pamby stuff. So to what degree do corporates and businesses, especially larger organizations, are really genuinely, not just box ticking, genuinely opening up to that whole side of the importance of people having that sense of purpose and that sense of confidence and being well-being, if you like? How much of that is the case, or is there still barriers, and is it still difficult to get them to take that up, especially when they've got other things on the plate right now, like huge increases in costs and things like that?
Well, for all the horrors and the difficulties of the pandemic, one of the good things that has come out of it is that, we have no choice but to take note of the fact that about 50% of our population are suffering from anxiety at the moment. So, the majority of people in the UK go to work. So the anxiety and mental health, physical health issues are showing up at work. So we are now getting more and more employers saying we need to keep our people well, we need to keep our people in work. We've got a huge issue in this country with productivity. So it is becoming, you know, an area of focus, and it's not now just a tick box, like you say, you know, in our strategy we've got that, you know, we've had somebody in for a well-being day, you know.
Yeah.
As you know, Phil, in 2016 it was, I actually had I'd had 2 previous periods of burnout, but I'd just, you know, got up out of bed after a week and slapped my face and said, pull yourself together, woman. But in 2016, I was in the midst of caring for my mum who had dementia, and I'd moved her next door, which in hindsight wasn't a good thing, but it gave her 2 more years of independence before she went into a home. I'd got my youngest teenager was having difficulties too. And on top of that, I had a national career as well as a business to run. And it just all got too much for me. And I ended up pretty ill. Physically ill, and my eldest daughter, when I came out of hospital, she took me up to a monastery in Scotland and basically left me there and said that they weren't coming back for me till I'd sorted myself out. Now, that was the first time as a very, very busy career woman with 4 kids and all the other stuff that goes alongside it. That was the very first time I'd ever spent a week entirely on my own. There were monks and nuns, you know, and I can remember sitting by this river in a kind of stupor, really, and thinking, how the hell did I end up here? How the hell am I so far away from what I thought I would be as a teenager, when I wanted to be a writer, when I wanted to be, you know, spending loads of time in nature. And here I am as a finance director and on boards, and yes, doing some great stuff around equality and things, but, you know, absolutely exhausted and standing in the shower every morning saying, can I even get through this day, you know?
Yeah.
And as you know, watching somebody you love, and however difficult my mum had been, you know, I just wanted to try and give her the best we possibly could for as long as possible. And it was having a terrible impact on my marriage, all of this, looking after mum and everything. So at that time, I discovered something called Courage and Renewal. One of the monks told me about a book that he thought I should read called Let Your Life Speak by Parker J. Palmer. And this was one of those jaw-dropping moments in life where you're reading something and you're going, oh my God, this is me, this is me, this is me. Why didn't I know this kind of stuff when I was 15? You know, so he heads up something in America called the Center for Courage and Renewal. He was a university professor for a lot of years. And then he had various issues, went to a Quaker center in America for a 2-week retreat, stayed there for 10 years. Ran a college there. It was a big center, ran a college there. And then decided that he needed to help other educators to reignite their passion for teaching, to take time out of very, very stressful roles, to reconnect with why they'd gone into teaching in the first place. That was his initial aim. What grew from that was a centre that has trained and educated about 300 facilitators around the world. And they facilitate groups of leaders, clergy, teachers, medical professionals, community organisers, and they do it through face-to-face retreats and also now increasingly online programs. And what it gives a business leader in particular is a safe and confidential space to come and take some time out, to stop, to pause, to really reflect on the challenges of leadership in this present time of very anxious employees, ridiculous costs, high energy prices, low productivity, Brexit implications, all of this kind of stuff, you know, massive advances in technology, the speed of everything.
Change, yeah.
Change. Change. And if you've got, and you're trying to support your employees all the time, because more and more and more businesses are realizing that their people are their most valuable asset. But who's there supporting you as a leader? Quite often your partner doesn't want to hear it every night when you get home. So to come together with other leaders and have it facilitated, the way in which you listen to each other, the way in which you ask questions of each other, also teaches you some great stuff to take back into your business or your workplace. But it really gives you that shoulders dropping. I've got some time here to sit and journal about some things. I can make some decisions away from work in a great place where there's some other people that will help me to make those decisions, but not by saying, read this book, have you done this, oh, that happened to me and I did that. The questions that we ask take you deeper into your own innate source of wisdom. And whether you want to call that your gut, your inner teacher, your conscience, your soul, your whatever you call it, we've all got one. But the fact is, we're going so fast that we don't sit down and shut up long enough to listen to it.
So true. Blimey, that is so true, isn't it?
Yeah. So program starting at the beginning of September. We ran a couple last year. They were so well received. We've got a program called Courage, Renewal and Understanding, and it's on a Wednesday evening for 90 minutes at 7:00, and it's once a fortnight. And hopefully by then, if you've got kids, you can sort a babysitter or your partner can help. You've got home from work, you've had a bit of something to eat, so hopefully you can spend 90 minutes, because really, honestly, stopping is one of the best ways to move forwards.
Yeah, no, absolutely true. There's a question here actually from Sandra, and she says, is it true that women can have it all, in your opinion?
If you are happy, if you can get your head around not being a perfectionist, right, then I genuinely believe you can have it all. But it's whatever is your all, isn't it? So don't be fooled into thinking that all is having the best car on the street, having the designer handbag, the all is when you sit with your kids round the dinner table and one of them's having a bit of a joke with you. The all is standing by a hedgerow in spring and smelling the flowers or playing with your dog. The all is giving your mum or your best friend a hug. Those are the all things, not the things that cost a fortune and are about status. So most people in the West can have it all, I believe.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I always smile to myself that we seem to get ourselves into a position where we get really stressed out and anxious about earning more money to buy more stuff to impress people we don't like.
That is so true. That is so true. Yeah, you need to do a rap about that, I think, Phil. No, but it is true. It is true. And in fact, what's quite interesting is that all of my children are wanting to build what I call simple lives. So they've all done really, really well. I've had one that's been an actress. I've got one that's, been a head of school at a college, and then she stepped back because it was killing her. I've got my son lives on his own canal boat that he's kind of built almost from scratch in London, and he's a plumber down there. But all of them are saying, two of them are saying we want to go and live off grid and really take it back to simplicity. But the others are kind of, we want to grow as much of our own food as we can. We totally believe that life is about relationships. It's about giving back as much as you can. They've got those values, and it's really, really great. And life is about communicating and sharing, isn't it? And I was actually brought up as a Quaker and never really understood the principles of it until recently, until I did the Courage and Renewal work. And it is by no means a religious work. It just so happens that they've used some of their really great teachings around, you only need as much as you need, and then share the rest. Just share the rest, whether that be stuff you've learned, food you've grown. That's the way to make the world go around, really.
Do you think that the pandemic has helped people to reflect more, to get off the hamster wheel of craziness, almost like forced in a way, that because there wasn't a really work to go to in the traditional sense? Do you think that has helped in that sense? Albeit, I say helped in some ways, it's helped for the individual, it's probably helped, but to what degree it's helped society if too many people are what you just said there, saying, nearly swore then, so sod it, I'm getting off the grid, I can't do this anymore, there's more to life. Before you know it, then you have got situations like we've got now where there's not enough people to do the work.
Yeah, but I think a lot of the reasons why there isn't enough people to do the work rest with the fact that people went into other areas of work during the pandemic when there were certain sectors completely closed down. Nobody ever mentions it, but we lost thousands and thousands and possibly hundreds of thousands of people because of Brexit. Yeah. And it's as if, we've forgotten that, we're never going to mention that word again. Yeah. So, but I do think for the first time, possibly in a lot of people's lives, they were able to ask the question, what's this all about? What am I here for? A lot of people were started to join mindfulness programs. A lot of people rediscovered nature or a sport or a hobby that they hadn't had time for. And interestingly, and you and I talked about this just recently, we both caught a fragment of something on the radio the other day to say that there's a 6-month pilot out there that involves 500 businesses and organizations, and they're all doing 4-day weeks. Now, we think that they're probably doing their normal 36 hours in 4 days, right? But how interesting is that the pandemic, it's made flexible working acceptable. Finally, it's made hybrid working acceptable. But also we're starting to look at more balance. We're starting to look at, is doing a 4-day week more productive? And I know that they did a pilot in a school about 6 months ago, and it was incredible, the effect it had on the teachers, the pupils, the admin staff, everything. And I know, and I wanted to get this in actually, when my kids were small, I only ever worked school hours, and the difference it made was incredible. Because I worked school hours, I had the time during the week to make sure that they got a good tea, that we got, some of the jobs done, that I talked to them when they came home from school. And it also meant that when my husband came home later, we actually had a bit of time together as a couple, which is very important. Now, I was just thinking, why don't they make it that kind of maternity pay or parental pay in some way gives employers the opportunity to let anybody with kids under the age of, say, secondary school finish work every day at 3 o'clock? Well, that seems to be so simple. If every man or woman that wanted to finish work at 3 o'clock to go home to be with their kids or pick up their kids from school, and then they weren't expected to do 2 more hours work after they put the kids to bed, wonder what a difference that'd make to society. That, and
yeah, it's political will, isn't it? It's political will at the end of the day.
It worked so well. And with my 4th child, I was never there when she came out of school. She went to after school club, or daddy picked her up if he was on the right shift. And many a night I didn't get home till 6:30, 7 o'clock. And there is a difference. There is a difference. I'm not saying that it's any less, any more, any what, but there is a difference in my memories of bringing up Katie. I cannot say that I was there for a lot of the milestones. I missed an awful lot of Katie, because I worked such long hours, that I was privileged to enjoy with the others. But, you know.
And yeah, and of course, that kind of regret, once it's gone, it's gone.
Once it's gone, it's gone. And that's why, you know, you could say, you know, when in 2017, Wendy, you gave up all your board roles, you gave up being on the BCC National Board, you gave up being president of East Lancs Chamber, you gave up being on the FSB Women's Steering Group. These were really like top level, you know, things that I'd worked to do. But I was like, do I put my mum in a home now while she's still a bit with it, but I can't leave her because she's leaving the gas on and all this kind of thing? Or do I put my career on hold or take my career in a different direction? So I completely downsized my business. I laid off my 5 staff. I gave up my offices. I gave up my board roles, and I became a consultant and in a different type of business, working from home. And I don't regret 1 minute of those hours and days I was able to spend with my mum.
Yeah, absolutely.
I haven't got either of my parents now. And when both your parents have gone, there's a different feeling.
Yeah. I mean, the hour's almost up, Wendy, but I have to say, one of the things I always like about talking to you is you're so candid. You talk, you know, in an age when there's people wearing masks all over the place and putting up fronts and Instagram life, as they call it sometimes. You always are very candid. You're very honest about the experiences that you've had. The irony being, of course, that they probably replicate 95% of what we are all experiencing ourselves in our lives, but we don't tend to talk about it. We don't tend to share it in the same way. So first of all, a big thank you from me, obviously, for being on the show. And thank you for being so candid and honest and open about what are obviously quite personal experiences. So really, really thank you for that. If anybody wants to know more about you or about your work or contact you, what's the best way to do that, Wendy?
The best way is to you can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can email me wendy@role.uk.com. And if you go to our website, which is the same, role.uk.com, you can find out all about what we're doing, about the courage and renewal work, about the work we do with women as well. There's going to be a fantastic scale up programme that Lancashire County Council are 2/3 funding. And that's going to be for 12 women from September. So that's going to be called Women Scaling Up. So look out for that. And also via my Role website, you can then get access to my writing website, because finally I found the time to write, and I have a book and I write poems all the time, and I also get out there in the hills and walk. So I got there eventually.
Yeah, I think I need to change that to Wendy Bowers Superwoman.
Oh well, that's great. My kids think I am, and that's
yeah. If there's an electricity shortage, we'll just plug you into the mains, and we'll be absolutely fine. Plenty of energy for that.
Well, yeah, I'm jealous of that energy. You've enjoyed it, because my husband, the other day, we took the dog a walk in the evening, and after about 20 minutes, we'd only got about 100 yards, and he said, "Will you stop talking to people? We are trying to walk the dog."
Well, I think it's fantastic, and thanks, John. Thanks for the comment, and thanks very much indeed, and thanks for everybody else who's tuned in. Obviously, most of you probably will be watching this as a recorded catch up, which is absolutely fine. And if there's not something in that for everybody, I think I need to give this up, because there's so much relevance in there to make you reflect and think about what you're doing, where you're going, why you're going there. If nothing else, just to show you that these two real people are experiencing a lot of the things that you're probably experiencing. I know Wendy and I, you know, at the end of the day, we talk about anxiety. We've got the anxieties ourselves because we're human. Of course, we do things like decide to do a bloody live stream in order just to add to that anxiety. So anyway, but we've really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed talking to you again, Wendy. So at the end of the day, tune in again to another Journey podcast live in the next couple of weeks, and we'll have somebody on. Nobody as good as Wendy, of course, but there's only one way now, and that's down, isn't it, really? So thanks a lot, Wendy. Great to talk to you again. Take care and good luck with everything that you're doing. And I'm sure I'll see you on the road, as I think Mad Max once said.
Okay, thanks a lot, and take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.